Now, I'd imagine a lot of my subscribers are familiar with my coverage of the Glock Gen 6 and the discontinued model rumors. Well, we have some updates for you. First, it looks like we got nothing from Glock at the NRA convention this year about the Gen 6. Based on the rumors, I was hoping they would do a formal announcement, as the rumors were suggesting, but they seem to be keeping quiet for the moment. Instead, we do have a new lineup for what is being discontinued. A little bit different from what we saw previously. I'll put the new list on the screen now. Let's take a look at some of the differences from what Glock was previously listing. You can see full screenshots for that list in my video linked below. Using the old .eu page that I had pointed out previously, that's now directing users to the .us homepage. So breaking it down a little bit, in the 10mm auto camp, the G20SF actually seems to be safe, or at least not on the list at the time of this recording for the discontinued models. For 45 ACP, the Glock 21 Gen 3 has been added, with the Glock 45 GAP seeing the G37 Gen 4 model get added as well. Conversely, the G28 is actually no longer being listed as the sole 380 ACP model discontinued. But looking at the 380 ACP offerings from Glock live on their website, I'm currently only seeing the G42 as being listed as available. So with this new list, it does seem that Glock is truly abandoning not only the 45 GAP, but the 40 Smith & Wesson and the 357 SIG as well. I would say that it's strange that the 17Ls and the 34s are on there, but if Ben Stoker is anything of a competition trendsetter, then the G47 is probably going to be the most popular option for competition shooting. Also, to make this even more confusing, the list of the models that are being discontinued has a number of entries for pistols that are still listed as actively available on their website. So it's kind of messy, but I'd wager that this list of models is what they are going to settle with, removing from their lineup. Now, to reiterate some of my previous coverage and speculation, however, I did go into more detail in my previous video on this topic. If Glock leverages the patents that I had discussed previously and uses them in the Gen 6, then they really only need to offer a handful of the most popular configurations and potentially sell caliber conversion and grip length conversion kits. I'll also address some of the comments that I got on the previous video, and I really do appreciate each and every single comment that I get. I do try to keep up with and respond to each one. One thing that I kept seeing cropping up was a potential redesign to address the use of switches. Now, I could see them doing something like that, but it would take a redesign of the slide and striker mechanism. Just for someone to come along maybe a few months at most later with an alternative design for a switch. And at the time of this recording, I really haven't seen any patents that suggest Glock is working on a redesign along these lines to make it more difficult for a switch to be installed. So honestly, I'm 50-50 on that. On the one hand, I could totally get why they would do it, but then they would be in the exact same position again soon after spending a ton of money in R&D, tooling costs, etc. So while it might get them out of some legal hot water, I think it honestly would be very short-lived. Besides, FRTs are already in development for Glock pattern pistols, so at least to me, it's kind of a moot point in terms of keeping fast-firing pistols out of the public's hands. Furthermore, FRTs also don't have that inherent legal liability of a full-on switch. But hey, if you want good gun autist legal analysis, go check out Matt at Fudbusters. He's a lawyer, I'm not, I've just worked with a bunch of them before. By the way, 0 out of 10, would not recommend. It's like herding cats with Esquire after their names. Huge pain in the rear. Anyway, another comment that I've gotten a few times on the previous video was the need for a trigger pull to disassemble. Okay, look, you can technically do that, but the trigger bar is in the way of pulling off the slide. So abuse your pistols however you want, but a Glock is really not supposed to be taken down that way. hence why they worked on an alternative patent. I'm not going to tell you that your desired disassembly direction is not doable, only that it may be daft. Another good question that I saw was on the dust cover being longer or shorter. This I could see being addressed by the slide, like you see on the G47 or the G17XL. The slide makes up for the space lost. Or they just have a dedicated shorter dust cover meant for subcompact configurations. Basically, everything is up in the air at this point in regards to what a Gen 6 would look like from Glock. I'm just trying to use the patents and the information that is available to come up with some hopefully well-founded speculation. And finally, a good point of correction. I previously and cavalierly used the CO name for the A-cut. I just wanted to correct it for the sake of being pedantic. The A-cut is the mounting cut that Glock is using for the COA aimpoint optic. It's being used a bit interchangeably online, but I did just want to correct myself briefly here. But to move on and wrap this section up. Without some kind of official word from Glock, what the Gen 6 will look like is going to be speculation. All I can really do is make these educated guesses, and I'm always willing to be incorrect about something, and as I stated previously, we're working off little-known patents, Glock's few officially published statements, and some rumors. I still don't think it's too nuts to think that a Gen 6 is coming up sometime soon, since the offerings are being streamlined, and a more modular take on the Glock pistol would let them keep doing that. Time will tell. I hope I'm right about what the Gen 6 will look like, but hey, I'm willing to be wrong.